Yesterday was the second day of another extraordinary session in Parliament. Uh, some things came out of it. The biggest news by far was a law that creates the National Asset Recovery and Protection Office, also known as the Nemzeti Vagyon Visszaszerzési és Vagyonvédelmi Hivatal. It passed in Parliament. Of course, everything passes in Parliament because TISA has a supermajority. It passed 143 yes to 47 no. Now, what does this group body do? And it's quite hardcore, actually. So the office is tasked with protecting public assets, sounds good. Investigating illegal management of public property, also sounds good. Assessing risks, conducting investigations, and this is where it gets a little bit dodgy. Placing entities under supervision, also dodgy, and accessing relevant premises, documents and accounts, as well as exercising investigative and prosecutorial powers. Now, TISA, when it came to power, one of the main reasons it came to power is because it was going to stamp down on corruption, on cronyism, effectively the theft of national assets. And this body, they say, is here to do just that, to look into where has national assets gone, where has the money gone, and effectively, how did some people get so rich? Or the other question is, how rich really are people? Because that's also a question mark, because generally if people steal, they don't just steal and wear the money on their shoulder, but they probably try and hide their assets. So this organization exists to do just that, to look into what is being done. On the other side of the coin, on the Fidesz side of the coin, so they're the only group together with the Christian Democrats that voted against it, they say this is going to be used to selectively attack individuals, to selectively attack companies. And they said, hang on, it's not so cool because guess what? There is no judicial oversight as to how this works. And in some sense, this is true. So this body can work ex officio. That means it can work on its own. Not only that, the only people it has to report to is the Parliament. So while TISA on one side is saying this is going to be a totally non-political body with total independence, on the other side, it works for the Parliament. And who runs the Parliament? TISA. So in some sense, is it entirely independent? No, of course it's not. But then again, nothing attached to the Parliament is entirely independent. However, so what sort of things can they do? Well, guess what? If by any chance, let's say, I'm living here and I've got a neighbor and I notice that my neighbor is suddenly driving a Ferrari, I'm encouraged to effectively make a call to their hotline and say, guess what? I think my neighbor is stealing. I think he's got his money illegally. Can you look into him? So in some sense, I don't like this because it is going to encourage a snitching culture. And this culture, while not as prevalent as it was in, let's say, Romania under communism, it was something that was encouraged under communism here. And many opponents to this, the creation of this body, are saying, hang on, this feels like a fallback to when we had the Államvédelmi Hivatal, which was the AVH, which were the scariest of all communists. They were the ones that knocked on your door at 4 in the morning and took away your grandparents because they were enemies of the state, according to someone else. However, what is also true, is that the electorate who put TISA in power, they put them in power to do just this. So while it seems like this body has been created that has way too much power, that can effectively investigate, lock down, take away documents, look into information, search, do whatever it wants effectively on its own, without a judge first saying, without effectively asking for a search warrant in American film terms. So without having to turn to a judge and say, we have some evidence that this person or this company should be investigated, can we go ahead and do stuff? And they get a piece of paper that allows them to do stuff. That step is now out the window. But again, I must add, probably the number one reason why TISA was elected, and by such a landslide, is that the Hungarian population wants this sort of corruption, theft of public funds, the winning of tenders that were obviously directly written so that only one company could win. They want this to end. They want this to be closed. So what is going to actually make the Hungarian population happy? Well, I think honestly what's going to make them happy is putting people in jail. The Hungarian population want to see people arrested who are well known, and by this I mean effectively people who are very close to Fidesz. So who would be top of the list? Perhaps Orbán's son-in-law, a man who, after getting married, suddenly he became a big property developer and has a bunch of luxury hotels. Perhaps Mészáros Lőrinc, who was schoolmate of Viktor Orbán. They come from a small little village not too far away from Budapest, who is now Hungary's richest man, who won all sorts of construction tenders, motorway tenders, all sorts of maintenance tenders for the motorway, all sorts of things. All sorts of huge construction projects were all, weirdly enough, won by him. Yeah, he employs a lot of people, but still, so that would be another choice. Another person might actually even be Orbán Viktor's daughter, Rahel. Tibor, who is the son-in-law, he's the one I spoke about earlier. But his wife, Viktor Orbán's daughter, so the rumor has it that she has her hand in all sorts of hotels around here. So I'm actually standing on the riverbank right beside Szabadság híd, Freedom Bridge, and right beside me over here is the Gellért Hotel. And in the 60s, 70s, this was a very, very famous, prestigious hotel. It became very dated, it fell into sort of disrepair. It has now been bought by some people, and it is being renovated by some other people. But I've heard from more than one person that one of the owners of this hotel is our former Prime Minister's daughter. Is this true? I don't know. Are these people likely to be investigated very quickly? I'm 100% sure. Another person, I think, who is definitely in the crosshairs is the son of the former head of the Hungarian National Bank. So that man is called Matolcsi. Now his son and his wife, the son and his daughter-in-law, they seem to live an exceptionally rich lifestyle from seemingly nothing. And his daughter-in-law, the banker's daughter-in-law, she made a lot of people quite annoyed because she got on Instagram and she was posting about her lifestyle. And in fact, when the elections took place, that family left for Dubai. So the son and the daughter, they are now in Dubai from where they posted, or they did post a while ago, I haven't checked. So there are other people that are in the spotlight. And I think the investigation of people like this will make people very, very happy here in Hungary. But what happens when you run out of this short list of people who Hungarians feel did something dodgy, and probably likely did? What happens then? You still have this body in power. Can it be used for political means? Yes, it can. I mean, right now in Parliament there is a body that is investigating the scandal that we had to do with bailiffs, and that committee is being headed by the head of Mihazang. And the scandal was that suddenly bailiffs would turn up and say, guess what, you owe a ton of money. How about you sign over your company to us? Or how about you sign your company over to someone else? Or how about you just pay us a bunch of money? So it seemed to be an extortion racket. I can't put it in any nicer terms. So what happens anyway if this body that now exists, well, when they run out of these big fish to fry, are they just going to put their heels up on a desk and do nothing? Or are they going to be used for political purposes? Are they going to be used perhaps in the same way that the bailiff system was used before, to encourage people with companies to sign them over perhaps to someone else, someone who is close to the government? We don't know. Of course, the hope is that this doesn't happen. But it's not by chance that Fidesz is referring to this as a rebirth of the AVH. It's not by chance, because they see that it can be used for the same purposes, to terrify, to scare, to do all sorts of nasty stuff. At the beginning, I'm 100% sure it won't be doing that. We also don't know who will be leading it yet. That position hasn't been chosen. But yesterday was a very, very big day. Make no mistake. So of all the things Fidesz has done so far, the one that happened yesterday with the creation of this body, it's the one that I think got the biggest round of applause. And while we might not like it, while we might be afraid that this could be used for nefarious purposes later, you have to understand, if if you don't live in Hungary, that this exactly is what the Hungarian population voted for when they elected in Tisza in this election. If you like my stuff, give me a like, give me a share. Thanks.